Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? So I am very excited for this video because it is going to be a collab with Annette's Makeup Corner. If you are not already familiar with Annette, you are definitely missing out. I believe she only started her channel in the middle of 2018, so she's still pretty new to the YouTube scene, but she has amazing content. She is very hardworking and posts a video nearly every single day. I'm pretty sure every single day. I mean, I don't keep tabs exactly, but it feels like she's always in my subscription feed. She does a lot of indie makeup and colorful makeup, so I feel like if you enjoy my content, you will probably enjoy hers. And she's just very, very sweet, and I am so happy to be able to call her a friend. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like our personalities click pretty well. She's definitely someone I feel like I was able to confide in and become pretty good friends with in a short amount of time. And she has always been nothing but supportive of my channel, so I'm excited to collab with her. I'll have her channel linked down below, so definitely go tell her that I sent you. And if you are from Annette's channel, thank you so much for coming over. I'm so happy to have you here. So today we are going to be doing a pretty fun topic. This was Annette's idea, and we're going to be talking about palette pet peeves. So when Annette first suggested this, I was like, I genuinely think that I'm not that person, like a person who's annoyed by that many things. And I thought about the idea, and I was trying to write down a list, and I could only think of one thing that annoyed me in a palette. And then like the next day I could think of 2 more things, and then the next day I added like another 3 things to the list. And before I knew it, I realized that I am annoyed by so many things when it comes to palettes. So let's just go ahead and jump on in. Alright, so starting off, I feel like everyone has a different shade in a palette that they're like, I need to have this in every single palette. Like, some people really want black in every palette, some people want a brown in every palette, some people want a cream shade, a transition shade. None of that really matters to me. I don't expect palettes to be standalone. Normally I just pair different things together, unless I'm doing a video that's like dedicated, like have to use only one palette type of thing, or like using one palette makes it easier. But I will say that I get frustrated when I have a palette and it does not have anything remotely close to an inner corner color. I just live for an inner corner highlight. You can kind of tell today I've got a nice glittery little thing going on, and it just frustrates me. So the palette that I have to give it a little example of is like the Gemini palette here, which I like and it's fine, but it's like there's no inner corner color. There's no lighter metallic shade. Like, it wouldn't matter to me if it was like a really light green, a really light white, a really light gold, just something to throw on the inner corner to brighten everything up, and it doesn't have that. And a lot of palettes don't, unfortunately. So that's the one color category where I'm like, I wish that there was an inner corner highlighter. So another huge pet peeve of mine is when the outer packaging of a palette does not match the inside colors. I don't understand why brands do that, especially nowadays, because everyone is doing sneak peeks like 24/7 of their upcoming launches. And it's like when a brand shows something, and the one that gets to me the most is the Nabla Cosmetics Poison Garden palette. When you see the packaging, there's like greens and like deep tones, and it just looks super interesting. And I think of a Poison Garden, and I see the coolest grungy like green, maybe like different little pops of colors, and well, mostly green. I see mostly green, and I just imagine in my head, I'm like, yes, Poison Garden, I love it. And then I saw the inside, and there was not even a single green, and it was half neutrals. There were some pops of colors, but it was just the most disappointing thing ever. And I'm like, why spend so much time and effort to do such a cool outside packaging, and then the inside, like, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Like, you cannot see the theme translated into the colors. So I think that would definitely be a big pet peeve to me. Alright, so my next palette pet peeve is pretty basic. I feel like it's the obligatory YouTuber rant about palettes that don't have names on it. My example is the James Charles Morphe palette. You can see here, if you go through his names for this palette, they're like hilarious. They're so like surrounding him. Like, I think like one of these purples is called Single. There's like a 10% off James code or something. Like, it's funny, and I just don't understand why anyone would take all that effort to name different things in a palette and be so like excited about it and to put so much heart in it, and then it's like it's nowhere on the palette. I was planning on keeping the little paper sheet that goes in here, but I lost it. I don't know where it went. So that's definitely something that frustrates me, just because I like to be able to say a name. Literally, it's not running down my nose. That's definitely something that frustrates me, just because I like to be able to say the name. And like with the James Charles palette, I'm currently filming with it, and every single time I hold it up, I have to hold it up and show it, and it's like this giant palette, and I'm like, it would be so much easier if I could just say, now I'm going in with, literally, and it would be that easy. Although I will say there's one palette, no, two palettes recently, they're from the same brand, that has kind of changed my mind on this just a little bit. I just had to throw this in here. I recently got the Archeo and the Paleo palettes from Clionadh Cosmetics, and this does not have a name on it. I'll just show you really quickly. There's no names on the packaging. It does come with a little slip with the names. The reason this palette gets a pass is because these are so easy to take out. You can see the little holes in the back. It is so easy to take these out, and there's just something about like other palettes, like if I had to rearrange them and put them in the wrong name spot, it would drive me crazy. But this, I have like nothing is wrong with rearranging these. So if I get bored of this color scheme, I could definitely see changing these around, maybe switching up the quads a little bit, and it would be so easy, and there are no names to hold me back from doing that. Because like a different example, the Dragon Child palette from Makeup Monster Cosmetics looks like this, and there are names, and these pans pop out pretty easily, but I will never move them because they have their names. So that's just to give you an example of how I kind of think about things. I definitely am kind of set in my ways, and I have like little weird quirks when it comes to my makeup. Alright, so my next palette pet peeve is just when they have ginormous pans. I feel like for me personally, I will never get through that much shadow, and it's just a waste. And when it's single shadows, it makes more sense because you can choose a specific shade and decide, but when it's in a palette, it's like you have no choice but to get the gigantic size. So my, just like real quick, a little example is the Ofra Pro palettes. These are pre-made, and like the eyeshadows are just so big, and I just don't understand why. My ideal eyeshadow size would be either this, like just to give you an example, this is the Maybe Cosmetics Take Me to Tokyo palette, but you can see the difference. Like this is so much more realistic than this. Even like the ColourPop palette sizes, I love those too. So my next palette pet peeve is definitely very petty, and it's not something that bothers me like too much, but it does a little bit. And it's just when palettes have a mirror and it's a fun house mirror. So I don't care if it has a mirror or not. Like that's not a deal breaker for me. I break most mirrors, honestly. Like I have so many palettes with broken mirrors. But when it has a mirror and it's just like a mess, like you could never do your makeup with it, it just feels like a waste in price of packaging, because normally mirrors cost more. And if the mirror is just like I said, a funhouse mirror, and you like, my biggest example of this is the P. Louise Secret Center palette. You look in that and your face is literally like curved, and I could never do my makeup with it. It would literally hurt my eyes. Alright, so my next palette pet peeve is probably the one that annoys me the most, and it is such a simple thing, but I'm a mess and I'm always disorganized, so I need my palettes to take up the least amount of space as possible. I don't mind having a big palette, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw this bad boy, oh gosh, I just hit myself in the head. Throw this bad boy out there again. The problem is that when you open it, like it does not bend back. Like I'm sure I could force it to bend it back and maybe break the packaging, but I hate palettes. Like it takes up twice as much space as it could if it would bend back, but it doesn't. But like the other, you know, 35 pan palettes that a lot of companies have, and it's like there's nothing to do except open it flat and like take up all of your space with one palette, and I kind of hate that. I've even had small palettes that do that as well, where you just can't bend it back, and I'm like, I just want it to take up the least amount of space as possible. The next thing is something I genuinely cannot understand, and this is just the idea of duds in a palette. And I get it if there's like parts of a formula, like you like the mattes more than the shimmers, or like some I don't know, if it's all personal preference, I get it. But when a palette has a eyeshadow that is just the worst, that's dry, not pigmented, you can't use it at all, I just don't understand what happened. I don't understand who let it get through production. It makes me so angry. So I'm going to use the Ofra palette again as an example. Okay, let me remember. Yep, it's this one. So there's a red shade right here, and I'll just like put my finger through, you know, there's some decent pigmentation. This one right here, nothing. This is the worst shade ever. Like, there's absolutely nothing I can do with it, and I just don't understand how a shade like that can end up in a palette full of colors that are pigmented, and there's just one truly bad, horrible, doesn't work shade. So that is something that frustrates me, and it's always frustrated me even when I thought about different drugstore palettes, and it's like the quality is so bad in specific shades, and I'm like, who passed this? Like, who decided that this was a good palette? Like, I just want to have a little conversation. I don't understand. Truly, like, wouldn't you want to make a better palette? Which brings me to my next pet peeve, and this is when, okay, there's like palettes and there's like big palettes, and then they turn them into smaller palettes and the formula is not the same. And my example would definitely be Natasha Denona. I thought when I did a video on the mini sunset that it was okay, but now that I've played even more with my original Natasha Denona palette, I can definitely see the difference in these shimmers. And from there on, she's made several different mini palettes. Like, there's a mini Lila palette, or Lila. I think there's a mini nude palette or something along those lines. And I've heard so many horrible things about the formula and people not enjoying them. And it just doesn't make sense to me, because it's like, if you're going to make a small, tiny little palette and it's cheaper, so the whole point of that palette is to lure people in to try your brand, why would you want to have mediocre shadows? Because if someone is willing to drop like $20-something on a little tiny eyeshadow quad or quint and see that the formula is not that amazing, how in the world do you expect them to ever decide to make a purchase and spend $130 or $200-something plus on a palette that actually has a good formula? I just don't understand. I would want to make those minis the most incredible thing ever, so that you saw what you were missing and you'd want to make a bigger purchase. Like, just from like thinking of a business standpoint, it does not make sense to me. My last palette pet peeve is when one palette has basically repeating shades, when they have shades that are so close you can barely tell the difference. I don't mind it as much when it's like certain like for example, people say this about the Jaclyn Hill shade palette, that so many different shades are the same, and I feel like they're not. Like, they have different tones, they have different undertones, and I feel like I can definitely see the difference on the eye. I mean, it's not a huge difference, but when there are shades that are so close that there's not like barely any way you'd be able to tell in the eye that they're different, I don't understand that. For example, I recently got the Violet Voss Rainbow palette, and these two purples, like, there's this one which is like a little bit of a deeper purple, and then this one which is slightly a lighter purple, but I feel like if you were to put that all over your lid, you would not be able to tell the difference. Like, they are so close. I don't understand why, like, this is only 10 shades in a palette. With only 10 options, you would choose two colors that are so incredibly close to one another. As an example, between the Jaclyn Hill palette and this one, the Jaclyn Hill palette, there are 35 shades, and you get a little bit of everything. But this, like I said, it's only 10 shades. So if you have such limited options, I would rather have a little bit more difference between the shades so that you could create more looks with the only 10 shades, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like I'm getting a little bit rambly. I'm definitely getting a little bit tired as well. So those are all the palette pet peeves that I thought about that annoy me. I would love to hear what you guys get annoyed about when palettes come out, or like with the releases or the packaging or the quality, anything like that. I would love to hear what your thoughts. So that is everything for this video. Like I said, go check out Annette, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.